name's Mary McDermott. I'm so pumped to be here. The ARC has been a huge supporter of me, and I've been a huge supporter of them, so we're pumped to bring this information to you today. And I get to wear many hats like we all do. My first hat is being a caregiver of Ruth in this picture. She's on my lap. A mom to Charlie and Ruth, and then a wife to Jay. And then my second hat I get to wear is being a fee-based financial planner for families like yours. It's a passion of mine to help families in all different facets of navigating this financial planning world, while also having all the technical expertise to be able to solve this puzzle and sit with you and be in it together. This is one of my favorite examples of how we talk about the planning. If you can find yourself and what stage you're in, it's easier to see exactly where you are today and what you need to worry about, and then what do you need to worry about in the next stage. If you are in stage 1, birth to 3, and you're listening to this, congratulations. You are going through a crazy amount of new diagnosis, a new baby, new everything. So I make everyone that listens to these give themselves a huge pat on the back if you're in stage 1. Stage 2 would be school. This is really all the bulk of school. So you're in either developmental preschool, age 3 and 4, you're doing IEPs. At age 15, you're starting to talk about transition planning. And so stage 2 is a big chunk of the planning we do with our families because we're getting ready for that big transition at 18. So when your child becomes an adult, they are SSI eligible. You would need to discover if you need to go through the guardianship process or an alternative. You should be on a Medicaid waiver most likely, or you need to at least apply for that. And then what are they gonna do? Are they gonna be in school till 21 through the transition program? Are they gonna be in a vocational program? Are they gonna volunteer? So to me, for me personally, stage 3 was the scariest due to there's no more school. So what is gonna fulfill Ruth's life? Will one of us have to retire early and take care of her and fulfill her day? So for me, stage 3 was a big, keep me up at night type of worry. The things that can happen in stage 3 are employment, residential, where are they gonna live housing wise? What kind of social group are they gonna have? And then are they gonna go to college, post-secondary college? So that just is a huge chunk of our life. And so I really want everybody to really think about stage 3 as your child graduating from high school and to your retirement. Stage 4 is, nobody wants to talk about stage 4. We are all gonna pass away, right? And that is the number one thing people come to us with is what's gonna happen when I'm not around anymore. So stage 4 is the party that we don't really like to talk about, but it's definitely gonna happen. And then what happens when our kids pass away? Is there any assets left? Is there anything we need to plan for? So the big thing you need to take away from anything in this presentation is we need to give our kids an amazing life, and we need to keep them benefit eligible if we are already on benefits, which means the state waiver and SSI. So stage 1, 2, and 3, we think of from a financial point of view, how are we cash flowing everything that we're supplementing for our kids? Stage 4, we start to think of transitioning them out of our home, out of us being a caregiver. And then in the middle of stage 4, when we pass, how are we gonna fund everything when we're not here anymore? And then what kind of legal vehicles need to catch all those assets? I do like to know what's keeping you up at night. And this is multiple things for different people. I shared with you that mine was stage 3. How is Ruth's life gonna be fulfilled? So after school's done at age 21, is she gonna have a job? What kind of friends is she gonna have? Are we gonna be able to live in the same house that we're in because it's not bus accessible? Those things seem very hard to pin down. And for me, I'm a huge planner, so things that are just kind of floating out there feel very, very loose to me. A lot of the other things that our clients say that keep them up at night: what happens when I'm not around anymore? How much money do I need to retire? What can I do now to plan for my kids in the future, no matter what age they are? When should I do this planning? it varies depending on your situation, your child's disability, your child's diagnosis, child's lifespan, your lifespan. So it all is going to have all these different variables, right? And then we are gonna put them all together and be very curious and come up with a plan of action of how we can try and close those tabs in your head. How do we get to this plan? A lot of you guys have probably started on your own. First thing people say when they come to see us are, I have a special needs trust, or I heard I need a special needs trust. Is that true? That is something most families need. It just depends on type, kind, when, all of those things. So I would say we've all patchworked some things together, not only financial planning, but estate planning. We do IEPs, we medically navigate the journey on our own. So we want to make sure that we're here to kind of help you along in that journey. We have a process, obviously, and we include funding, legal, and family supports in our strategy. So as clients have come on, we realized we needed to add more services, and we really listen to what you guys need. And so we want to make sure that we're encompassing all those three things. So what does that entail? So our plan, like I just talked about, includes a funding strategy. So how are we going to make sure there's enough money to fund their entire lifetime while they're living with us, while they're in a different housing type of situation, funding while we're retired, and then funding when we're not around anymore. So we have a cost calculator we go through, and we're gonna ask you a lot of questions about your child's everyday life. And we're gonna also ask about what you're doing in unpaid labor for your kids, because that's usually the list where we can find out if we needed to replace you, this is what it would cost. And there's paid labor and unpaid labor, so we wanna make sure we capture all of it. Now, we're doing all this funding strategy to make sure there's enough money. We need the legal strategy in place to capture those assets. Our kids can't directly inherit money. So I'm gonna say this multiple times, but two things. We wanna give them a great life and keep them benefit eligible, okay? To keep them benefit eligible, they can only have $2,000 in their name. And now that might change. We're advocating to make that go up, but right now that's $2,000. Even if you have, let's say $100,000 to your name, that's still more assets than our kids can inherit, and it needs to be protected from a legal point. And then on top is the support strategy. So this is everything else. So what kind of care plan do you have in place? If something did happen to you tomorrow, could somebody pick up kind of a roadmap and be able to navigate your child's life? So our example is my daughter only eats 5 foods. Frustrating and not great. But if someone were to come along after we would pass away, they wouldn't know that those are the 5 foods she ate. It would be a really rough go for that person to figure out what she's gonna eat. So where do we document that in our care plan? Now, before you can think about any of these 3 circles in the middle, you have a triage thing. You have something hot that's happening right now with your family. So it could be school, medical, it could be financial or legal related, but there is something that you really want to address right now. And when we close that one tab and get it accomplished, then we can make sure we hit all the others. So all of our plans start with the same start point. Where are you now? So how much does it cost to care for your special needs loved one? How much will it cost in retirement? So how much is it going to cost in the future? And how are we going to get there? So where are you now? How are we going to get there? And what do you have in place that will cover most of it? The other thing we like to talk about is, do you have any other goals that you need additional funding for? So I have a 9-year-old. And very typical. So we want to fund for college for her. So in our whole plan, we also need to carve out college for my older daughter, Charlie. If you have any other funding goals that we need to address, we would add that into the plan. And then what funding do we have in place to cover what we want to get to for the goal? Now, a lot of people at this point are like, Mary, we have no idea what that number is. That's where our cost calculator comes in, where we are asking you very personal questions about your child to make sure that we have all of those costs built into the plan, and we're going to try and cover them as much as we possibly can. Sam is going to be through this whole presentation. Sam is an example that we use with families just to get your brain going on how any of these funding, legal, and care plan fit into you. So Sam's 37 with autism. He lives with his parents and he drives his mom's car. He takes some online classes and he helps out at home. Sam is on SSI, he's 37, and he pays monthly sum of room and board to his parents. Sam also has an ABLE account that his parents contribute to on his behalf. So when Sam and his family came to us, Sam needed the funding assessment. So we actually needed to know from the parents, what are you supplementing today? What are you paying for today? And then what are we gonna need in the future when you're not around? How much are we gonna need to make sure we cover? So we started that funding assessment to make sure that the parents could make that dream of retirement possible. So with Sam, we wanted to go through that funding assessment, and then we figured out the solutions to fill the gaps. So for Sam's family, the solutions that we came up with and what the assessment showed. So the assessment showed that he had a gap of $65K. So that means the parents were supplementing $65K annually for him in everything that he needed, which is that's a large gap. The other part we uncovered when we were talking to Sam and his family was he wasn't on the right Medicaid waiver. So in his state, once we realized he could be eligible for this different waiver, that knocked that $65K down by $25K, which is a measurable amount. So then we're down to $40K a month annually that the family needed to come up with every year. And they already were cash flowing that. But remember, Sam's parents wanted to retire. So they were asking, can we fund $40K annually with our retirement savings? And we could show them that that was possible. We also looked at their retirement funds just to make sure they were aligned with their goals. Sam Sr. had multiple jobs at different tech companies, lots of accounts. So we wanted to consolidate was one of the solutions we brought to the table. And then also align management, like how are they managing this? Does that align with their goals, how they live? So that was just one of the talking points we had them. So they needed a pretty big gap when they were gonna pass to cover Sam's expenses. So $40K a month for, I think it was 32 years for Sam's life expectancy, comes up with a large sum of money that they need to cover. So they did a second to die life insurance policy. They call it a survivorship to make sure that that whole gap was covered, and they were healthy enough to do it. These just 4 points that we went through with Sam's family made their parents be able to actually dream bigger, and knowing that they can leave Sam and they have other 2 children and they would be set up. So they were pumped to know that in the next 5 years, I think, that they could retire. So these are the different components of that funding strategy. What's your goal? So we want to say funding needs assessment. Where are you now? What's the goal? And what are the funding streams that are going to cover the goal? What are your wealth strategies now? Are they in alignment with your lifestyle and your beliefs and everything that you want them to be? What Social Security, SSI, SSDI are we on? And then what waivers do we have in place? We want to give our kids an amazing life and keep them benefit eligible if they are on benefits already. So medical waivers are through the state, SSI is federal, so we want to make sure they're on those systems to kind of cut down that big number that we might have to cover in the future. And then what insurances do you have in place, and what are group, what won't follow you when you retire? And then we have a whole slew of other tools. So ABLE accounts, trusts, and all those other resources that we're going to talk about in the legal part. The one thing I do want to really warn people that we like to really do in our practice is make sure we have a pretty big family meeting. So if you have grandparents that are wanting to help with your kiddo and they write in their estate documents directly to give money to your child, that will over-resource them. So we want to make sure we have conversations up the chain about any inheritance that are coming, how their estates are done. And you can always blame, just put it on me. We watched a video with this woman and she said, hey, we need to ask you about your estate planning to make sure we don't over-resources our kiddo. Inheritance, trusts, and ABLE accounts are all resources that we use in our other tools. What legal protections are needed for each member of this family? How will the assets transfer from one family member to the other? And what other legal needs exist? So where are we now? Where do we want to go? And what are the other factors that we need to consider? Different types of legal strategies that we're going to talk about: wills, medical directives, power of attorney, guardianship a little bit, trust, special needs trust, regular trusts. And then how do we plan for the whole family? When we're doing the planning with the families, it's a whole family-centered plan. And it doesn't even just only include the nucleus. It's anybody kind of outside that first circle. We need those people too, usually, to help with our families. So how does this legal strategy affect Sam? Sam does have the potential for independence, but he relies on his parents significantly. And one of the exercises we like to do is we have you write down everything you do for your loved one. So if you are married, we make you each do a list, and then we make you cross-check that list and find out what the other person has been doing that the other person doesn't know about. This was super fun for me and my husband. I don't know when the bus comes. I actually don't know the school time schedule, but he didn't know how to get into my chart, or how to set an appointment, or how to get test results, or order new medications. I think with all of us, we're trying to divide and conquer, which is necessary. But when we do this list, you're really going to find out how much your kiddo is depending on you. And if you can break up the work on this list, you can find more helpers around. Because the procrastination in doing this work for most families is I don't have a big circle of people as a second backup. And I hear that all the time. And I know families that don't have a lot of support. But when you do this list and start to break up the work between caregiving, financial, fun, you can find helpers, because it's not just you. Because we all know all these parents of caregivers are superheroes, and we do a lot of stuff for our kids, but we're gonna have to break up the work to fulfill our team. So Sam Sr. and Susan, they pay the bills, maintain the home, assist with medical appointments, and they protect his well-being. Those are big bullet points that took a lot of tasks to come up with. They both agreed that the parents would serve as Sam's power of attorney. So that makes them one and the same for health and financial. So Sam was willing to sign a doc that said, hey, I want my parents' help in medical and financial. Other options, guardianship, if your state has another least restrictive option, there's a lot of options out there. For our planning specifically, we always just want to make sure there's a backup. If there's not a backup, is there a professional that would step in to make sure that everything goes exactly how you wish? Just like you, probably they aren't sure who will help when they're no longer there. So they also want to make sure to leave behind the funds and instructions on how to help Sam. What did we do for Sam? They had the power of attorney, but Sam's parents wanted to create the supplemental needs trust or special needs trust, depending on your state. Now, the reason they wanted to create a trust today was because their parents were still alive, and they wanted to give money for the benefit of Sam Jr. We all know by this time, we want to give our kids an amazing life, keep them benefit eligible, so they can only have $2,000 in the name. So what Sam's parents wanted to do is create the trust today so the grandparents could name out that trust as well. So anything from the grandparents would go directly into that special needs trust. Now, you don't have to create it today. You can wait and create it upon your passing. So a lot of trusts go not created and not funded until we pass away. Okay, and that's called a springable trust. So you can have something in your will that says upon us passing, a trust needs to be created for the benefit of Ruth, and it needs to be a special needs trust specifically, so that, like for me personally, half of our assets would go into that trust for Ruth. Half of our assets would go to another trust for my daughter, Charlie. A lot of trusts are created that way. So don't think you have to be a millionaire to have a trust. You really need to have over $2,000, and you'll need something to create it. Now, there's different trusts out there. There's pooled trust, first parties. You can have your own. You could have, our state specifically has a program to enroll in that's a pooled trust. So there's all different types. I'm not going to kind of hit on all of them. It's just our kids need them no matter what to capture those assets. So they named the beneficiary of their life insurance, their second to die, specifically to the special needs trust. So the way that works is both the parents have to pass away for the insurance to dump into the special needs trust. I always say nobody benefits while you're alive. So me and my husband have a second to die, so we both have to pass away for it to fund Ruth's trust specifically. And we, as much as we can, make that death benefit match the need, so that it just dumps in there, it's funded, it's ready to roll. They updated Sam's POA to have a backup. They didn't have a backup before, so they wanted to make sure someone was there. And they worked with an attorney to draft a microboard. Microboards are kind of a newer type of structure, depending on what state you're in. And it's basically a little board of directors to help navigate the care plan. So what do they want their life to look like? And you want the people on the board that can make sure that those wishes are gonna come to fruition. A guardian is not a microboard. Guardian or POA can be on the microboard and a trustee and all those people in those really important positions, but they're not making decisions. They're basically helping the trustee and or the guardian make great decisions around the person rather than just having two opinions. You could have multiple. So what are the components of that legal strategy? Across the top are for you as the parent or the caregiver. So wills, you need to have at least a simple will. Power of attorney, so this is for you if you become incapacitated, someone can help make decisions. Advanced health directives, what do you want to happen if you become incapacitated? And then trust, this is a different type of trust. This is basically a living trust. So do you want all your assets in a living trust so it goes through probate in a wagon? Big assets need to go to a special needs trust. You can deed your property in different ways so it goes directly upon death to someone else, property or special different types of accounts. And then the letter of intent or a care plan. So this is where we actually capture the day-to-day. What are their wishes? What fulfills their day? What brings them joy? What doctors do they have? What medications are they on? Where do you get those medications? You can imagine the list of what the care plan can look like. The only thing that's not included here that we need to add is the ABLE. So I like to use an ABLE as a checking and special needs trust kind of as a savings. ABLE accounts are really great tools for our families, especially those that are working. So the example I give with an ABLE, I use my daughter Ruth, is Ruth's working at Mod Pizza. She loves pizza. And she gets $2,000 from Mod. She's getting $1,000 from SSI just to make things even. She's paying me $500 to live in my home. So she has $2,500 in her account. Now we know we're over by $500, so where are we gonna put that money? And she's not gonna spend it down. That can go into an ABLE account and we're right at that $2,000 threshold. So there's ways to leverage the ABLE that are very, very important for our families. But yeah, we need both usually. It's not an and or. What supports do we currently have in place? And I want you to think of this as paid labor and unpaid labor. So what are you supporting? If you have a caregiver come in, what are they supporting? If you have a respite provider, what are they supporting, right? So what supports do we currently have in place? What supports are we lacking? So what do we still need? There's always a gap usually. And this kind of comes into the waiver. Are we on the right waiver? Are there enough caregivers? Do we need to recruit more people to help? And then how will we support healthy aging over time? So I always tell people, I naively definitely thought that I could take care of Ruth forever. And I am realizing now that is not true. In my 70s, I will not be able to take care of another human. And if I do, it'll probably be my husband. So I think we can only caregive for so long. In our planning, we try and just cut that off at 70. We would like to find another housing solution for our kids while we're around. So you can be there as a parachute if it goes great and if it doesn't go great. So I think the transition of trying to transition a kiddo after a parent has passed away, maybe having to move to a new place or strangers coming into their home, is a very difficult transition comparatively to, I'm gonna transition you while I'm here. This is gonna be a place where we know that you'll be safe. I'm here just in case. And also energy-wise, I just don't think we can maintain that after 70. So one, can you age in place in the house you're in? Can you age together for a certain amount of time? And then is there a place in the future that they can go where you can make sure you're supported? We really are gonna ask you the hard questions of the unpaid labor is the hardest ones to answer. So the support strategy for Sam. So he has supports in place. His parents wonder how he'll be able to live more independently on a day-to-day basis. So once we filled out those lists of what they do for him, they realized they had some bad habits, right? And we all get into some bad habits because we got to get out the door. or I'll just do it for you, it'll be easier. We are just practicing now with Ruth getting out of the car in a parking lot. Now, that seems like maybe a small deal for most. It's a huge, scary deal for us because Ruth has no concept of danger. So parking lots are frightening. But I also wasn't giving her the chance to learn that it was scary because I was opening the door from her, protecting her, guiding her to the safe spot. And so now when we're at daycare, which is also a pretty small parking lot and very controlled, I make her get out of her car. I open her door first. I wait in the car for a minute and have her walk around, and then I get out too. So does that take an extra amount of time? Absolutely. Will that help her independence? Absolutely. So it takes energy, it takes some proactivity thinking to do it. I think the best example I have with younger kids too is dressing. So make them get dressed, make them tie their shoes, even like you gotta buffer more time to make sure they have that independence. And I know Sam's family was feeling that when they did the list and they realized, well, he's not cooking, he's not completely bathing on his own. Like if we take more time, we can probably get him to different spots. So these are the things we put in Sam's support strategy. Obviously, we just talked about he needs to live more independently at home. We documented the care plan needs. So we documented exactly what they do and then how are we gonna supplement those. Brought a life coach in, which I used a couple now with our clients, and it makes a huge difference, especially with our older loved ones, because man, you really don't wanna hear it from your parents. You don't wanna hear how to cook, how to live your life. None of us probably at that point in our lives want to hear that from our parents. So a great client had a lot of food problems with their son, and they actually hired a dietitian to come in and teach food, like how to make it, how to try new things. And it was amazing that he took that instruction from a third party, and he was not gonna take that from his mom. I think hiring third parties, if you have the budget to just try and coach them through that, made all the difference. So with Sam, we got one of those meal planning kits that get mailed to your house. And so he could open the package and actually make it right that minute and see in a picture what that meal was supposed to look like. So they all together would make the meal from the kit, which was a great first step. And we got him to be comfortable with making those things. And then we took another step. Now you gotta make the grocery list for a future meal that we're gonna make. And then with this grocery list, we actually gotta go get the groceries. And then we gotta make the meal. So we reverse engineer a lot with our kids because I think seeing the end goal and working backwards really helps. At least it helped with Sam. So now he's learned a new skill. He can cook, he's cooking, he loves to cook. We still have the kit, but we also have grocery list and have to go here and make the thing. They also involve Sam in like a CPA meeting, financial planner with us, which was very cool to have him there. And I don't, know how much like he took out of it, but he felt very important being invited. Sam also made a Google Doc. So I encourage a lot of my clients, so either you're gonna keep some of the stuff in paper. So I know my notebook friends are all out there, you got your notebooks. My digital friends, there's different ways to hold docs, but the easiest free way is through Google. You can have a Gmail, G Drive, you can share files out to other people. So organizing electronically for them was important, and so they got Google Docs for all of their documents. Sam got to make his agenda for the microboard. He is basically the executive director of the microboard. It's all about him. So he made an agenda of things that were important to him. So every year they have to have a meeting, it has minutes, it has all the things. So he made that agenda. He's in the planning in the family. So they're just hoping that some of this that they do inside the home pushes him out into the world where he's feeling more comfortable at home, then he can kind of socially go out a little bit more. Identify the needs. So where are we now? Assess the needs. We're gonna match those needs to the supports that are out there. If there's gaps, we're gonna fill them and develop the care plan so that someone else can come behind and make sure that this goes as well as possible when we're not around. And then we got a plan for aging for everybody. For us, like the house we live in, I love it so much, but we're not on a bus line. We have steps down into our house. So if either me or Jay gets hurt or injured, there's no way We would have a ramp, and then if Ruth lives with us, she's gonna be completely isolated because there's no bus line. Those components alone feel not great for me. I don't know if we'll be able to age in that home specifically. It's not really built for older. I would say it's great built for a young family, but like once we start to age out, we're gonna have to figure out something else. So where are you? Where are you in this process? You started today. You watched this video and you started today. Congratulations. I want zero shame for our families, zero fear in this specific category. It's overwhelming and very fear-based, and I just want to make sure like you did it today. You came here to learn, so congratulations. 2, usually people have some kind of, I have stuff in place. I hear that all the time. I got stuff in place. Great, what's stuff and where is it organized and how do we make sure it's going in the right direction? And I have a trust, but I don't know what else to do. Okay, cool, we gotta fund it with something. So usually when people come to me like, hey, I heard I needed a trust, I was like, cool, but what are we gonna fund it with? And how's that all gonna work? And what do you think? And they're like, we have no idea either. So then that's when we start the process. So this is our process, and this should be for, you can use this for yourself, but you want to do like the basic connection meeting is where are you now? So on those mall maps, you're like, okay, we need to figure out what we're doing today. So where are we in the funding? Where are we in the legal? And where are we in the care plan? Then a draft plan needs to be created. And goals need to be written. So where am I now? Where do I want to go? The cost calculator is part of where do I want to go, because that's going to be a pretty defined number of what you're going to need throughout your lifetime to cash flow, and then what we need to pay for after we're not around. And then you got to have some recommendations. So this is how we're going to do it. And this, you got to figure out how you're going to get to I want to get to Sears, but I'm at JCPenney. So you got to, in the mall, figure out how you're going to make it all happen. This is our group. This is me and my partners, Kristen and Kathy. We're our new wonderful slogan, we're powered by caregivers. We are going to make this happen. We are also all caregivers ourselves, and somehow make this all work with working with you, and then making sure our whole families are taken care of. So our major priority is we're here for you, but we also take care of ourselves. And here's my info. Email is best if you have questions. These presentations are all part of our outreach. We want to make sure we educate as many people as possible. Our families don't get out of this planning, but we want you to be empowered to do it today. Thanks for joining me for supporting your family with a special needs master plan.